Coming to you live from the Business RadioX studio, it's Franchise Marketing Radio, brought to you by IDS, an award-winning digital marketing agency that delivers integrated marketing solutions for franchisors, franchisees, and franchise development teams. Learn why over 75 brands depend on IDS's team of dedicated marketers and client service professionals to deliver a strong ROI on their marketing investment. Go to idsfranchisemarketing.com for a complimentary digital audit and consultation.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Franchise Marketing Radio. I'm your host, Rob Ganley, and today we have a very special guest. That's my standard intro for everybody because they all are awesome and very cool people, very smart people in the franchise world. And today I have David Leonardo. He's CFE. He's Chief Executive Officer at Chillin' Nitrogen Ice Cream. And I can't wait to dive into the model, the business model. Don't let that simplicity fool you, but there's some words in that name that really interest me. So I can't wait to talk to you, David. It's great to have you on the show. Tell me a little bit about the brand. How did it all come to be? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah. It's first of all, it's great to be on a chat with you and chat about franchising and marketing and all the cool things that we got going on. But I've been in franchising for over 20 years. Got my start at Burger King's headquarters down here in Miami when I moved down here many years ago, and really started my career in more of the strategy, business development, finance departments, and then migrated myself into working with larger private equity groups and doing franchise deals, selling big blocks of distressed stores to big private equity groups. And then eventually worked my way over to Arby's and Wendy's, did some international work for them, and really helped grow them domestically, the Arby's side. And after getting close to 10 years of experience on that front, I've really spent the last 10 years kind of growing up the corporate ladder or moving myself up the corporate ladder on more regional brands, some more national brands, working with brands like Pet Supplies Plus, Wild Wing Cafe, and now Chillin' Nitrogen Ice Cream. Chillin' Nitrogen Ice Cream is actually a locally based company down here in South Florida, started in Pinecrest back in 2012 by Danny Golick and Donna Golick. And over the past 6 years, they've been growing. The first 6 years, they've been growing the brand, had a lot of interest from people, grew to about 5-6 locations, and then decided that they wanted to start franchising. And that's when we met. And what we did, it was just been an amazing experience, actually building it from the ground up, building all the franchise documents, bringing in all the partners, and really kind of building this engine that's going to allow us to really scale up and grow this franchise industry or franchise business to where we want to be.
Well, I think they were pretty darn lucky to get you. I just listened to what you said. So I don't think there's a lot of people that look like that. I kind of feel like that sometimes with me. Like I took a certain path, but I couldn't have scripted it, right? Like it just,
yeah.
But when I look at what you just said, I think having that experience, that big corporate experience, the private equity experience, the franchise experience, man, like that's hugely important, especially when you're talking about launching a brand and scaling it. And some of those won't matter till later. But you'll really be positioned well. But that's great.
Yeah, it's interesting because I prior to joining Burger King, I started my career in investment banking in New York and had left back in the late 90s. If you remember the .com craze, I left to join a startup. And so it was really my first kind of startup experience and did that for about a year and a half. And I have to tell you, I was blown away by the experience. It was such an amazing experience to work in a smaller setting, wear multiple hats, be on the go, not know about funding. I mean, there's a lot of stress that comes with it, but there was just so much excitement getting my hands dirty in a lot of different things. So that when I went to Burger King, much more structured, and that eventually when it was time for me to start thinking about what I wanted to do, I really looked back on that experience and said, man, I'd really like to get my hands dirty in a smaller company again. And this opportunity came available, and the rest is history.
Yeah, you got a little combination of it all there. Like you got the franchise element, the growth element, the startup element, kind of thing. Yeah, no. And we were talking earlier, and you mentioned the .com, and I was a young man in that time, in my 20s, selling technology. I was lucky enough to get in with some big companies and learn about computers and then learn about the internet. And so, I was selling to the .com guys, and Match.com was one of my first clients. I remember those guys.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, they were a lot of fun to hang with, but it was like everything was new because but the reason I brought it up is to circle back to franchising because all exciting and it was good for me to go through all that but I landed in franchising in the early 2000s because I was looking for a pathway to become an entrepreneur, right? Not just a sales guy. I was very independent, very entrepreneurial minded, but I really needed to learn about business and I'd gone to school for finance. So I can relate to those ideas
Right.
and thought I would be on Wall Street and stuff. I thought that's what the
Yeah.
path I was going to take. But I talk too much, as you can see. So probably better that I'm not the analyst guy that's just staring at things all day. I do a little of that though. I have a little of that in me, but I totally can relate to that feeling. And I feel like so circling back to franchising again, it's one of the best ways to get into business. And I think it's very
Yeah.
rewarding as a franchisor to be able to do that for your franchisees, to help them be a team, be a group, be a brand, be a tribe, and really help communities and help people get into it's just a whole ripple effect. I love I could go on and on.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's interesting. I could see why people like yourself or myself are drawn to franchising because very few industries have I come in contact with where you meet so many different people from different backgrounds who are all trying to become entrepreneurs, right? And if you're a people person, this is a great industry to be in, right? You get to meet and connect and strategize with so many different people who are all after kind of that great American dream, right? To go out there and make it and start from something and get to something else. So it's just it's been a great journey. But one of the most rewarding pieces has been really seeing people start with one store and grow to become multi-unit, and then multi-brand operators. And it's been really nice seeing that across the multiple brands that I've been a part of.
I really can't think of a scenario for any kind of entrepreneur, investor, or person that franchise doesn't offer. Like there's all kinds of levels of that.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
mentioned,
Yeah.
multi-unit and master franchise. There's other ways, but like depending on where you're at, but it all still flows towards the same good, which is getting people into business, helping communities, and bringing some cool products to the market. So let's talk about that. Let's give me
Yeah.
a proper introduction of the brand. Tell me how you're serving folks, or like how does that feel? Tell me about the experience. Tell me
Sure.
about the ingredients. Tell me
Yeah.
all about
Yeah,
the
well,
brand.
for those of your listeners that are down here in South Florida, I'm sure they're familiar with chillin' ice cream. But for those who aren't, what we've done is we've taken basically the standard way of making ice cream and kind of changed it a little bit. Typically, for the past 100 years, you'd see ice cream made in a factory, comes off the conveyor belt, gets thrown into a truck, a freezer truck, and gets shipped to locations across the country where they gets put into a display, and then little Johnny comes in on the weekend with his grandfather and they pick out of the 15 different options, and then someone comes in and scoops it out. What we've done is we've basically brought the factory into the store. That's simple. We literally bring the bases. We buy the bases directly from a dairy. We pour that base into a bowl depending on what the customer wants. If he wants ice cream base, we do that. If he wants a coconut milk base, almond base, oat milk, yogurt, tart, you pick whatever base you want. We pour it into the bowl. We add the flavor. We put it under the mixer. And then because of our technology, we can dispense liquid nitrogen into that. And what the liquid nitrogen does is it flash freezes it immediately in negative 360 degrees Fahrenheit, and turns it into ice cream in less than 3 minutes. And
Wow.
so what's really happening from a science standpoint is it is so cold that the ice crystals are extremely, extremely small. And thus it creates a nice texture to the ice cream. So the texture you get with this ice cream, that's basically like if it was just made off the conveyor belt, is a mixture between gelato and regular ice cream. So you're going to get that type of texture.
Yeah.
And so it's just a extremely freshly made, right in front of you ice cream. And it's not only great to taste, but it's a great experience for people to watch, and you get to see the whole science behind it.
Wow. Very cool. Like I said, there's always something unique that you guys think through. And I don't know how it all came to be originally, but what an amazing, cool
Yeah,
business.
well,
Like
let me
literally
get into
chilling,
that. I
right?
mean, if you don't mind, I'll actually give you a little backstory on how it started because it's a
Yeah.
really
Very interesting.
it's a great story. My partner Danny Golick was at the University of Florida, graduated, was thinking about med school, and he comes from a family of entrepreneurs. And while he was studying for his MCAT, took a gap year to study for his MCATs. his buddy comes and says, "Hey, you got to come up to Northern Florida with me. There's this crazy business with somebody pouring cream into a bowl and then pouring liquid nitrogen in there, making ice cream." And Danny, being the eternal entrepreneur, comes from a family of entrepreneurs, said, I got some time to burn. I'm studying for my MCATs. Let me go up there, and was completely wowed by the line that this business created. He's always been a tinkerer of technology, and said, you know what? I think I could do something a little bit better, better product and more efficient, and add a little technology to that. So he came back down to Miami, sat down with his parents and said, "Hey, I know I want to go to med school, but I'd like to start this business first." So his parents basically funded his first store with the promise that if it didn't go well, he'd go back to med school. And so one store, first store was in Pinecrest, Florida, 2012, was an immediate home run store. And then that turned into a second store, into a third store. So by third store, really med school was out of the picture.
Yeah.
And so that's really how it all
I love that. Yeah.
came
It's
about.
like,
And then over the years, we just started adding a little bit more technology to it. I mean, a lot more technology to increase the throughput, increase the efficiency, reduce the waste, all of the things that basically brands start doing once they, really start growing.
well, the other thing about franchising that's interesting is like you start off with something like that where it's like, hey, that's really cool. It's a great idea. People love it. It's great ice cream, great experience. And and then you think, well, how will we expand this? Everybody's telling us how great it is. And you can see people say they would love to have one themselves, right? Like that's happens
Yeah.
to a lot of franchise brands before they become franchises. So there's this idea that then you become, when you do that, you really take a hard look at the business side of things, right? You look at every detail of how you're running the business. Because to become a franchise, that has to be well documented and well presented. And because you're going to bring other partners in, franchisees, that
Yeah.
you're going to give them a playbook, right? Essentially. And so it takes a lot of effort to think it through, right? So you went through that, you had this amazing idea. Then you went through the refinement of becoming a franchise brand. Now
Right.
you've scaled to a certain size of growth. Tell us about how big you are right now and where are you now? I know you're in Florida, but anywhere else?
Yeah. So we started opening stores 2 years ago, and we're happy to say we're up to 14 stores, with another 15 in the pipeline. So we're probably hoping to open somewhere between 4 and 5 stores this year. So we started opening stores in 2022, and yeah, so we've been kind of growing at our own pace. We're a team of 4 or 5 here at corporate, so very. I don't know if the word is resource starved, but let's just say we're very busy, all of us, and we wear multiple hats. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I try to, if you look under the covers, we try to give you all the support that a typical brand, any regular brand would do, right? We have the construction management, we have the real estate support, we have the construction support, we have, operations team, we have everything. The only difference is, whether they're outsourced as a partner, or whether they're, basically a salaried employees by us.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. Let's walk through that first year for anyone that's kind of listening, wondering what's it like to be an operator? What's it like to be an owner, franchisee? So typically, like you said, obviously everything is sort of scripted out, right? And it's
Yeah.
the goal for everybody in the brand is success. And I want to serve the community and serve the franchisee and make it a success. So there's a script to that. You want to tell me a little bit about what that looks like that first year? Because I know that
Definitely.
first year's critical.
Yeah, that's great. Great question. I think first and foremost, one of the benefits of being in franchising, and I'm sure your listeners are going to agree for those who don't, is that we do hand over a playbook to you, right? So we've been at this for 10 years. We've opened now 14 stores. We kind of know what's worked and what hasn't worked. So we're basically going to hand you a grand opening marketing budget that we help you design and kind of tailor to your specific market. But we start doing advertising several months before you open. And really, the grand opening marketing budget is really something you spend throughout the whole first year. Gone are the days, if they ever existed, of you just opening the doors and people are just going to come in, right? You really need to be prominent in your local community. So one of the things that I look for when I'm interviewing potential candidates is how comfortable do they feel reaching out to other businesses? Are they part of the the business community? Are they okay with reaching out to local high schools? Because that kind of grassroots marketing is really a huge part of what makes us successful. We do a ton of fundraising in our stores. A lot of events in our stores. We do some catering from time to time. But all of that is, we try to tell people you win over your customers one at a time. And so you couple that marketing packages that we do, and the whether it's on Meta or whether it's on different grassroots or basically the franchisee themselves going out and doing some grassroots marketing in the local high schools or local organizations, whatever that is, you're really trying to get people to come into the door, get them to order delivery. One aspect of our business that I think is a very unique aspect of our business is that we have kind of figured out that holy grail of how to deliver ice cream. And so,
you mean deliver it, like literally deliver it? Is that what you're
deliver it,
saying?
deliver
Like
it.
that? Yeah, I was good. Okay, so it's not.
You
Yeah,
can,
hot food
yeah.
is obvious. Everybody does that.
Yeah,
Tell us
yeah.
about
I
how
will
do you
tell
do
you
the
that
ice cream?
I was completely floored by this myself. I would have never imagined that you can actually deliver ice cream through a third party vendor. But what we do is we make your ice cream just like anybody else's, right? We put it in the cup. And if it's to go or if it's a delivery, we take that cup, we dip it in a canister of liquid nitrogen. It comes out rock solid, and you're good for about a 15, 20-minute drive time. And, it is amazing because you could put it in a paper bag and you just go with it. As long as you're not, going to make a couple stops on the way home, it's going to be just like this if we have handed it over to you over the counter. So all of these things require the franchisee to kind of have a pretty good understanding of marketing because there's a lot of different channels, right? So we do market on a lot of these different channels through third-party deliveries. But the marketing is really talking to franchisees, and we have conversations with franchisees once a week, if not twice a week, depending on how long they've been open. And it's, hey, what have you been doing in your local community? Who are you talking to? What kind of fundraising events are you doing? What's your meta, and what are you spending on Google? What are you spending on AdWords? So some of those are the conversations we do. And the good thing is that we have internal teams here that help people. So if they're not really well versed in a lot of that stuff, we can help them. But our spend is usually about 3% of sales. So if we require franchisees to spend 3% of your sales in the local market, they are not sending any of that to corporate at the moment, which is too small, to be honest with you. So right now we're spending the money to pay for marketing support for the franchisees, but that's coming out of royalties. I think once we get to maybe 50 stores, 60 stores, then I could sit down with the franchisees and say, hey, here's what we could do with 1% of your sales, right? If you guys all want to get together, here's the kind of productivity, here's the kind of, return you could get on marketing with that. But as of right now with 14 stores, I rather support them and just make sure they're doing the best with the 3% that they're spending. That helps.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of what.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. No, I think, what I look for in sales and marketing is hooks, right? A hook sometimes has to be invented, and it comes with a promise. Like the idea that you invented this ice cream, or this idea, right? Is like using nitrogen in the process, and because you did that, you created a hook for partners that look like schools, right? Any schools, any kind of school, any kind of organization that wants to kind of couple some fun with some education with some great ice cream. So that's a hook. If you didn't have the nitrogen part, it might be a little harder. You could still go to a high school and say, hey, we're doing a fundraiser. But I love that you have that extra hook. I think there's something to say, hey, this is actually pretty cool. We can even incorporate a little education into it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
look,
I just
our menu
think that helps.
and for your listeners, our entire menu is designed like the periodic table. So, you pick your size, you pick your base. We have a vegan options as well for bases to go back to, coconut milk, almond milk, oat milk. We have sorbets. So once you pick your base, then you pick your flavor, and then you pick your mix in. So you're literally creating the menu as you go along. And so I try to tell people, like, we grew up with Taco Bell, right? And everybody just ordered off the menu, and now everybody has Chipotle, right? And it's better quality. You're kind of going through an assembly line. It's quick service. And that is the kind of experience that you get when you come into our store. You're looking up at the menu and you're kind of adding things as you go along. And then we make it right there in front of you. So it's really exciting. There is an exciting factor, but I will say that wow factor gets quickly replaced with the value factor, right? And so we try to tell people, like, your kids are going to be wowed the first 4 or 5 times they come in, but then after that, they really want to get to that cotton candy, flavor. They want to get to the bubblegum flavor. They want to get to all the flavors that they love and all the gummy worms on top of it, right? And they want to make sure that it tastes good.
No, I can imagine it's quite the It would be one of my favorite places. I can tell you right now. I'm in Colorado Springs, just FYI.
Nice, nice. Well,
Maybe
we've
you
been
could.
very fortunate. We've been voted best ice cream in Miami this past year. So we really take that in a market as large as Miami, with as many competitors as Miami has, to get recognized for a chain like ours to get recognized like that is a very big honor. So we're very proud of our positioning here, and we hope to bring it to your market soon.
I agree with you when you say that, because to be rated in a big city, a metro like that, especially in a warm weather market, a
Yeah.
tourist market,
Yeah.
you have a lot of competitors. Good job. Um, so let's talk a little bit about finance a little, because you got me
Yeah.
thinking. I know as a CEO, you have a plan, right? Well, probably a longer range one, right? Maybe it's 5 years, 10 years. In your mind, I don't know how much you share or define, but as a CEO, you're a strategist. So you're also a finance guy. You know a lot about big business in the franchise sector. How does that influence your decisions now? And what are the key attributes you would be looking to make sure are in place? I think I've heard a lot of cool ones. Like, if and I'm not an expert as probably as much as you, in terms of like, how do we prepare for a future that might include a partnership? Because I do see a lot of roll-ups, a lot of consolidation. There's a lot of holding companies or platform companies, I hear them refer to themselves as,
Sure.
where they have multiple brands. And
Sure.
you're a guy that would understand all that and probably have worked with a lot of those companies, right? So, like, how do you prepare for that? Are there key things you're looking to put into your brand now? But what are you looking to build and
Yeah.
make sure is
Yeah.
there?
I mean, look, I think one of the things we try to focus on is unit level economics. So we really try to make sure that our franchisees are hitting their metrics, right? And whether it's sales metrics at the beginning and then bottom line metrics as you kind of grow, we want to make sure that they're trending positive and they could hit break even as quickly as possible. So that to me is probably the thing that keeps me up at night. How quickly can I get my franchisees to hit profitability? How quickly can they hit those average store unit level numbers that we have here in our company stores, right? And so the quicker I can get them to do that, the quicker I can hit them to hit those numbers. Guess what? The quicker they come back and they say, "Hey, I'm ready for store number 2," right? And so I think anybody who comes on board here is going to look at a couple things eventually, and one of them is, "Hey, how's the unit level economics doing?" In light of everything that's going on in this world, right, with inflation and costs and labor and everything like that. And then secondly, they're going to ask, how's the validation, right? What kind of support are you providing, and how is it validating, and what kind of infrastructure do you have to provide that? And so as I look to expand this brand, my primary focus right now, and I do all of the franchise development. So I approve everyone right now. And that's on purpose, because honestly, the first 50 franchisees you bring on board are a huge, huge indicator of the type of business you're going to become. And so I'm really trying my best to make sure that we bring in people who can buy into the strategy that we have, but also a different type of franchisee than I would bring in at 1,000 units, because the type of franchisee I bring in today has to also recognize that I do not have that regional person that's going to come into your store once a week and check your store. I do not have 3 marketing people. I do not have that. So a different type of entrepreneur a little bit. I have the playbooks. I have the support. You can call me on my phone. You can call anyone here on the phone. But there is a little bit of a different type of franchisee at an early stage franchisor than maybe a more established franchisor. And that is probably why maybe some of the big franchisees of multiple brands, that's probably why they wait a little bit for brands like myself to get to that 50, 75 unit mark before they kind of come on board, because they understand that by then you're going to have a little bit more infrastructure there to support them. So.
You're really good, man. Like that's like that insight that you just shared about, there are different buyers and different franchisees, right? And as you scale, then you attract different types of franchisees that may impact differently, may come in and buy out 20 territories or something.
That's right.
Because they have a
That's right.
strategy. But that you've been exposed to those kinds of folks because you've worked with the big brands, and they were structured that way in many ways. They were already doing a lot of that. So I know that, because I do work with a lot of emerging brands, and
Right.
everything you just said is critical. It's building that foundation. And by the way, anyone that gets involved, I think it's a really rewarding experience to be part of a newer brand. I think you really don't give up much. You get a lot. I do think there is, you're right. You got to just lay it out and say, this is what we are. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the beauty about franchising is it's very transparent. But I think when you're early on in a brand, you have a great opportunity to really be a part of it. Not that you wouldn't later, but I do think it is a different kind of a situation. And you're right. And these are going to be your future and be like a long way down the road with you. You'll be talking to the same folks and they'll become like family. So it is important decision.
Yeah, and look, if I could just add to the conversation, I think one of the big pieces in franchising and development and marketing is, I think for candidates as well, I think they get drawn into the number of like how many in the pipeline and this and that. And I think any private equity group who's been in at this is going to dismiss that number. I mean, they're going to want to know how many of the projected openings that you had for that year actually opened, right? And so we've all heard these stories. You've been in the business long enough of brands just building up that pipeline, but when it comes to actual opening, somehow there's a disconnect. And so what we've been focusing more on is really not signing large agreements, right? So we really take a look at the financials and make sure that they don't bite off more than they can chew. Hey, sign up for one. Let's start off with one. Let's see how you're doing. Start off with two. You know what I mean? The largest agreement we've signed to date is 4. And obviously the person was really well capitalized, brings a lot of experience. There's a ton of territory available in their market. But it's someone that, has been around our brand for 10, 15 years, grew up with our brand. So it's a little bit of a, but even then, so it used to be 10, 15 years ago that you want to sign these huge deals and, 20, 30, 40 stores. But the truth is that very rarely do those deals ever materialize the way they're laid out in the development schedule. And so that's what we want to make sure we're opening stores, not signing deals.
Man, you're good. Yeah, no, because it's like, I don't know what the right phrase would be, but like you can build a business at like 50 units that's just optimized. And anyone that's a financial guy or an expert in operations can look at it and say, yeah, if we just at some point in the future, we just add some gasoline to that thing, to that fire, it's going to go boom. And it can go boom. Like it's prepared to grow. Like you can't just say, oh, well, here's $1 billion, go grow. I mean, you burn through a lot of capital. But that's amazing. Yeah, that you're putting that level of focus early on that so that you're ready when it's time. And again, the other thing that I picked up on that you mentioned, I think is critical, is that you do take the time to say, who's the right fit for us? And let's go at the right pace. Let's sign the right deals. It's more about the health of everybody. That's what I love about franchising. It's self-regulated. You can't, greed is there. Of course, greed would be everywhere, but there's a lot of regulation. There's a lot of things that keep you from doing the wrong thing for the brand or doing the wrong thing for the franchise.
And by the way, I will just say this, that I don't care how long someone's been in this industry, you're gonna make some mistakes. I've made many mistakes on that front, and a couple other fronts. But I mean, sometimes you get people through the cracks that said all the right things, and then unfortunately, when it's time to operate, it just somehow it's not gelling, right? And so, how do you recover from some of those mistakes? How do you make the right pivot in order to kind of make adjustments? And so those are things that are unavoidable when you're growing a company. And I tell my team, look, if you're not making mistakes, we're not doing the right thing. Like you have to keep out making mistakes. We're a startup. I mean, we're just, we have about $5-6 million in system-wide sales. We were up 40% last year, which we're extremely happy and proud about. But I tell my team, I go, we got to keep going. Okay, we made a mistake. Let's learn from it. Let's make sure we don't do it again, but let's just keep going. And so I think hopefully that turns out to land us where we want to go, but I'm definitely not afraid of making mistakes.
Well, I think Elon Musk said, and I wouldn't compare franchising to some of the stuff that he's done, but he has a comment, and I think it's in the latest biography that was written about him, about making mistakes. He said something about if you're in a startup, then you should be burning through at least 20% making mistakes. Like it's just, you're going to make mistakes. You got to anticipate, and it's about how you learn from it, pivot from it, and move on. So that's part of it, but that's all back to, as the franchise brand, you can come in, start a franchise, and there's just so much that you don't have to think about, but by no means is it a magic switch, right? You got to come in and add your entrepreneur heart to it. But again, it covers those gaps that I believe are the biggest gaps that just make the other side, if you do start another kind of business, very difficult. So, but yeah, failure is part of success. And I had to get used to that. I was an A student, so I didn't like failing as I got older.
Good.
Someone
I was
pointed
not.
out to me.
I was that BC student. I was a good athlete though. I was an athlete.
Well, there you go. It's the same thing, dude. You had that. You didn't want to fail at that. It's the same
There you go.
mechanism.
There you go.
Yeah. But anyway, so tell me a little bit about expansion. So you're in Florida, obviously. How do you plan a rollout? What marketing channels seem to work best for you as a brand at this stage? I know you're early, so a lot of it is probably meeting people that know the brand, people that you feel good about. But
Yeah.
in terms of marketing and outreach, I know there's typical channels. There's a portal companies that provide leads. There's of course brokers that are intermediaries that help people find brands. And then
Right.
there's the just doing your own marketing, which I get involved with a lot, and running ad campaigns on Google or, of course, Meta. So, thoughts on that? What do you find, and what are you planning for in the future to continue to expand your franchise?
Yeah, so we've actually dabbled like in a lot of the different channels out there. So we've paid for some lead generation. I would say that because of where we are in our growth, a lot of every single deal that we've done was a customer. Every single deal. And so what you typically do is you try to find out, okay, where are my franchisees coming from? Where are my good franchisees coming from? What backgrounds do they have and stuff? And so we started early on focusing more of our in-store marketing. So we do a lot of in-store marketing for franchising because of that wow factor that people walk in and they see the huge lines on the weekends. They see the throughput. We're up to 110 cups an hour in our fastest store. So they see the throughput on a custom ice cream, and any businessman is going to look at it and say, whoa, I wonder what this store can do. And so we try to have signage inside the store, and I probably get most of our inquiries come from that. Now, obviously, that leads to a limited amount of exposure because you're only accessing the people who come into your store. But right now, because of where we are with our capital and because we don't have outside money, that's really what we can afford. We're doing that. We've done the broker stuff. However, the brokers we've worked with have not required annual fees, have not required us going to their summits and stuff like that, because there's just so much cost involved in that. Nothing wrong with them at different stages of our growth. I've worked with them. They're great. But for where we are in our growth, it just seemed like a very large investment for us that we're just not prepared to make. And so we've done some of the brokers that just work on a success fee, right? And okay, they bring it in, and if we like the person and they met, then yes, we'll give them a success fee. Lead generation is something that we do sporadically, but we haven't had as much success with that, to be honest with you. We have closed a deal with some international franchisees where we've worked out a operating agreement. We have an operating entity here that operates some company stores, and we'll probably operate some stores for some franchisees who are foreign investors. So that's something that we've done in the past. So, I mean, again, we're very creative to looking at other avenues. And I think as we grow and as we bring in more money, I'm definitely willing to dabble in a couple of those other channels that I've used in the past and have had success in it that just are too expensive for me. But right now, I think where we've done a really good job at is making sure that when you walk into our store, by the time you walk out, you're going to know that there's franchising availability and that we're looking for stuff. We do e-blasts. We go after our loyalty customers. We do texting. And right before we open the store, so right before we do our grand opening to all the public, we'll invite all the candidates in that market who are interested in our brand to come and look at the new store. And so we'll have like a special night where we give free ice cream. We'll talk to them. We'll walk them behind back of the house. And then we'll invite them the next day for free ice cream, because we do have free ice cream all day for our grand opening for anybody who comes in the door.
Yeah. No, I love it. You're the first person that articulated that. I believe that that's probably common, especially with some of these crazy brands that have these long lines. Like I drive by, I'm like, wow, I love the hamburger, but I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait a little longer because the line is so long, right? I'm like, wow, that's crazy. But I never thought about the connection between, because you're right. Everybody, I talk to people, like we just talk, like you just conversation. You'll talk about something like a new franchise brand comes into town, long lines, big grand opening type thing. And it does create a buzz, around everybody.
That's
Everybody's like, oh, they must do well. Like that's
right.
great. That's crazy. So that's perfect to capitalize on that social sort of proof. I find with marketing for brands at your level, you're right. I think you're right at the right stages. You're saying they're all the right thing. When you talk about things like Google or online or digital, I think what you're doing right now is great. I think creating content, telling your story, sharing it as many places as you can online that is more about an exchange of content like SEO, organic type content marketing. That's perfect. Like that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
Just keep because what most the habit of
Yeah.
most people would be is to Google you later.
Right.
So as long as there's a presence that comes up with a brand search that looks good, that's the key. And
Yeah.
that's not hard to accomplish. It is hard to get new people that never heard of you before to come through a website and then talk to you about buying a business and for you to feel like you found the
That's
right
right.
fit. So
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And what I've done also is I've tried not to overwhelm our social media site with things related to franchising. So I've created a separate like Instagram handle for Chillin CEO, right? So Chillin_CEO. And I tell the story there about growing, right? Growing the brand so that if you want to see everything related to the product, you go to Chillin Ice Cream, right? But that if you want to see things related to franchising, related to growth, related to construction, related to the type of franchisees we're looking for, related to why we're doing this, then I have kind of a separate channel. And I think that's one of the things I've learned over the years that it's probably better to kind of keep them connected, but keep a separate channel because you definitely want to tell a different story. You're telling a different story to a different client, you know? So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
something that we're doing as well here
yeah.
on this end. But yeah, little by little, I think that's,
No,
yeah.
I'd love to have one of your franchisees on. We'll talk about
Oh,
what they're
absolutely.
doing. Yeah, yeah. We'll talk about some of those marketing angles you talked about earlier. So, it is about telling the story, and yeah, you tell the story a little differently when it's a business opportunity for someone versus the serving the client. But at the same time, it's all connected, right? Because
That's
it's
it.
part of why we'd want to do it. The smile on people's faces, the excitement of kids. If you like that, that's again, that's what we do. We tell you about the reality of running that kind of a business. Right? So there's a little bit of behind the scenes and in front of the scenes of that, but I think it's pretty standard to do. Um, that's amazing. So as we wrap things up, I want to respect your time. I know it's Friday and you probably have a lot of
Yeah.
things to catch up on. But if before you go, is there any advice or tips that you might have either for a franchisor that's looking like you, a fellow CEO in the business that's maybe under 50 units? Any advice for someone like that, or for someone that might be interested in starting a business like yours?
Yeah.
Anything to leave them with, and maybe tie it to some of your background, because I know a lot of us had mentors or been influenced by books we've read. If there's any connection you want to share with someone we might know, love to hear that too. Any of your influences, but any tips or advice?
Yeah, I think for franchisors, I would say one of the most beautiful things about this industry is that there are so many people willing to help you. There is just an unlimited supply of vendors, of experts, of franchise people that are willing to pick up the phone and give you advice. And so I would say that anybody looking at franchising their company can go to any number of early startup franchise conventions for early stage people considering or actually just starting out. And you could learn just so much from all of that. And so I think that's probably my big advice. The other advice I'd give to them is one of the bigger investments we've made early on in our track is to hire a local PR agency who has really strong background in franchising. And I've always felt that that's actually just such a good investment for us because they're getting our story out there, right? It's a story that we want to tell, and sometimes it's just hard to get that story when you're so small. And a good PR firm will help you get that story out there, especially when you're trying to compete against all the other bands. So those are my two pieces of advice for franchisors. For franchisees or for anyone getting into business, my suggestion, I got two suggestions. If you're not willing to roll up your sleeves and do every single position, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Like my father had supermarkets in New York City when I was growing up. I come
Oh,
from a family of immigrants, and when I tell you, We did everything in our parents' business, everything. I mean, from going to the meatpacking district to pick up the meat, we did everything, and we worked hard. And I had all my family members believed in extremely hard work before you have the privilege of calling yourself a boss. And so I think that goes for anybody looking to start a business. And then the second thing I would say is don't get into business with people you wouldn't like to have dinner with. That's, if I can't have, and that's part of our discovery day. So we do all the interviews, we do everything, we invite them to Miami, we spend the day with them, we have dinner that night. If me and my partners look at each other and say, I don't know if I like this person, I don't know. And I think it works both ways. If you don't like someone, this is a marriage. You're signing a 10-year franchise agreement, in some case 20. You really need to make sure you get along with someone. And so, ask them about themselves, ask them about their family, ask them about, what they're about. You really get to know somebody. So that's how we're trying to run this business.
I love it, man. No, I like the way you said about, well, I come from an Italian background. Is that your background Italian? Your name seems.
My family's from the Dominican Republic.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So, I felt like that's how I was raised. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel like later on, now that I've looked at business, like the best way to really run and lead a business is to know it down to the details, like every detail. It becomes a problem later if a leader can't let go of certain things, right? It can go in reverse, like, but you absolutely need to know how things are working at every level. And then you can start to disseminate and delegate and figure that out. But I think that is such an important thing. I believe a lot in servant leadership. I believe that we have to understand what we're asking each other for, and we're all a different part of the team. And I just think it would be hard to do if you always were isolated in one spot. Like, I can only do this, right? I've been working for 30 years. I'm not going to clean the bathroom,
Yeah.
So I hear you there. And I think that's invaluable advice. Like, just if you want to get good in my business, it is about details. I feel like one of the things I committed to years ago in the 90s was just, I'm going to know everything there is to know about technology. Well, I've changed that. I've revised it because I realized I can't possibly do it without lots of friends. But, now we have AI, maybe that will help. But even so, it's a humbling thing, but you do need to pursue it, right? You do need to have that desire to be good and knowledgeable. So I think that was immensely valuable advice. I appreciate that. Please share the best way we can see you online. What's the website? Tell me again the Instagram.
Yeah, so you could go to chillin.com. That's CHILLN.com, and that's our website. And for those of you who have Instagram, you could go to Chillin Ice Cream. So again, that's Chillin, CHILN Ice Cream. And then also Chillin CEO. And so that's mine personally. So you can check us out there. And we're opening up a store in March in Lake Nona, Orlando, and then another one probably in April in Bluffton, South Carolina. So hopefully for those of your listeners who are in those markets, you can come check us out. And for those of you who are visiting South Florida or in South Florida, in Texas, we have stores in San Antonio and in Fort Worth. And then in Nashville, we have a store out there. So yeah, come check us out.
San Antonio. I may get close to there. I'm going to be looking. There you
go, man.
I'm looking forward to it.
Great.
I want to experience it. I've never experienced ice cream that way. So I think it's amazing. And you're the first. So I think you do beat all the other ones that I've experienced, the other franchise, but they're just old hat, yeah, so what? Anyway. It's great to have you on the show.
But we take a lot of pride in what we do, man. But it was great chatting with you, Rob. You're great. I really learned a lot from talking to you and hearing about your background. Really, there's some parallels there. So I think we need to have a drink someday and continue our stories.
Definitely. Would love that. And I definitely want to have you back, and we'll definitely be talking to some of your franchisees in the future. So good to have you, David. It's a pleasure, and bye for now.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.